Iran thought it had everything figured out. Missiles and drones, use them both, and you can hold off the US by causing enough damage to bring an end to Operation Epic Fury. Iran was wrong. While it's using conventional weapons, the US has just started a space war. Technology so futuristic that it shouldn't even exist is obliterating some of Iran's most important weapons, and there's nothing the crumbling Tehran regime can do about it. The US is using satellites to take out Iran's missile launch sites. As much as we'd love to tell you that the US has an impossible space laser that fires on those sites as soon as they're discovered, that isn't the case, at least not yet. But what the US is doing is just as ingenious, and it allows for Iran's launch sites to be detected as soon as they're used and then destroyed within a matter of minutes. Let's set the scene. With so much of its military infrastructure in tatters already, Iran has been reduced to launching missiles from isolated sites. Iran has to be careful. It knows that US fighter jets and bombers are patrolling the skies, so any missile launch has to be conducted from a safe location. And it has to be fast enough to allow Iran to fire, then get its launchers back into cover before a response comes. That should be fine for Iran, as long as its air defense radars give the all clear. It has plenty of time to launch before a US fighter jet comes calling. That's what Iran thinks. But as the launcher is rolled out and the missile is fired, something is happening in the deep depths of space that Iran doesn't realize. In orbit around the Earth are satellites operated by the US Space Force, which was established in 2019 during US President Donald Trump's first term in office. Those satellites are packed with infrared sensors and they're constantly watching. As soon as one of Iran's missiles blasts off, the satellites detect the heat signatures of those missiles. In an instant, the location of the launch and in turn the launcher is pinpointed. Air defenses on the ground are activated so quickly that Iran's missile is destroyed before it has the chance to reach its target. That's bad enough for Iran. Another failed launch isn't what Iran needs now that the US and Israel have shut down the saturation strategy it intended to use. We'll get into in a few moments. But what Iran never accounted for is that heat signatures detected in space can lead to missile launchers being destroyed on the ground. As soon as the US satellite picks up on the launcher's location, the data is sent to a fighter jet pilot, and that pilot arrives at the launch site within minutes. A standoff missile is fired. The Iranian soldiers who launched the missile barely even register that the response is coming before the missile hits. The launcher explodes, and one more piece of Iran's missile infrastructure is taken out of the war. This is a type of war that Iran never thought it would have to fight, a technological battle against the United States that has far more tricks up its sleeve than anybody could have expected. And while there are more ways that the US is using space to shatter Iran, which we'll cover soon, the existence of its heat-detecting satellites is perhaps the biggest threat the US poses to Iran's missile-based strategy. The New York Post reports that the process of tracking one of Iran's launches involves both the satellites and special nodes on the ground. As soon as a missile is launched, infrared beams are fired from America's satellites as they automatically track the heat being generated. On the ground, and remarkably enough, almost entirely in the US itself rather than its Middle Eastern bases, crews are working non-stop inside radomes. These special radar domes, which look like giant golf balls buried in the ground, receive the information that the Space Force satellites capture, and they use it to calculate both the trajectories of the fired missiles and the locations from which they are fired. It's an extremely effective combination of technology, and it has resulted in hundreds of Iran's missiles being destroyed before they ever come close to striking their targets. And what the US has here is a three-layered space-focused form of air defense that is unlike anything that the world has seen before. Satellites, radars, and radomes combine to create an early warning system that is so advanced that the US is the first to know about any of Iran's missile launches, and it learns about them practically as soon as Iran decides to fire. And what this also means for the US is that it can avoid putting boots on the ground in Iran until it is absolutely ready, as explained by former Space Force member Bree Fram. The fact that this isn't a mass formation of troops with rifles on the ground speaks to the fact that this force is built with extreme technology and the brain power to operate it, Fram tells the New York Post, adding, "Those combine to make us the most capable force on Earth and keep Americans safe from harm as they do the most difficult, inherently risky things that we ask them to do." What the US has orbiting the Earth right now is the ultimate high ground. Having the high ground has always been an advantage in conventional warfare. It provides visibility across large swathes of the battlefield, as well as a defensible position that forces an enemy to work even harder to take territory. But this new form of high ground changes the game. The US doesn't just have visibility on the territory that surrounds a large hill, it can see all of Iran at all times, thanks to its satellites. And as for Iran having to work harder to take the high ground, that just isn't even an option for Tehran's crumbling regime. It's brought drones and missiles to a space war, and it can't do a thing about the satellites that the US is using to shatter its entire strategy. The impact on Iran tells you all you need to know about the effectiveness of the US space technology. Iran fired more than 500 ballistic missiles at targets throughout the Middle East, including military installations and civilian sites by March 4th, according to the Long War Journal. It would be inaccurate to claim that none of Iran's missiles have hit their marks, but by March 2nd, only 6 US service members have been killed in Iran's attacks, along with 18 being wounded. That low casualty rate tells us the vast majority of Iran's missiles aren't making it through to their targets, and heat-seeking satellites so far up in the sky that they can't be seen are one of the biggest reasons why.